Hello everybody, Jonathan Reeves here. Today we're going to look at another Vectorworks and Twinmotion tutorial, but this time we're going to focus on something I've not done before, which is really the realm of urban design. Now this was inspired by a recent competition that I did, the Twinmotion Challenge, which was to look at reimagining sort of open space and urban design, and you can see a few of the images that I produced. So first of all we're going to start off with the Vectorworks model. And this was a project that I worked on a number of years ago with Nick Kuhn Architect for a massive master plan down near Canary Wharf. You can see Canary Wharf in the background there. So basically this was a Vectorworks model I produced when we were developing the design, and you can see it really is a block model. So these are made of massing models and also some extrusions. We put some basic sort of things like trees and a little bit of detail into the model, but because it was a master plan, you know, it was fairly low detail in many ways. So what I'm going to do is now export the model as it was into Twinmotion. For those of you who've not used Vectorworks for urban design, it's absolutely fantastic, and I will do another video on this shortly. Got some other projects I'm going to show. So what we're going to do is import this model as the Cinema 4D file format into Twinmotion like we've done before, and processing the data. So here you can see the model lands into Twinmotion. Now when you click onto the manager on the right hand side, all the different objects pop up, and if you do click F you will be able to fit to your overall model. That's good. You can also manage the visibility by turning on and off the various elements, particularly the starting ground. Now because on this project we had some water, I lowered the starting ground so that we can actually see that water there. So what we're doing now is we're just actually importing some context. Now this is where Twinmotion really excels. It has a connection to OpenStreetMap, and you can see I've just kind of basically searched for the location. I'm scrolling in to find that location, and then I'm clicking on the grab tool. And what you can do is you can basically zoom and zoom out to kind of fit the area within the grab box, and when you're ready, click grab. Now it takes a few moments and it will download from OpenStreetMap some basically nice blocky context that you can put your project into, and here you can see that context. It can be a bit fiddly to kind of match up the context, so I've done that already, basically by moving and rotating and aligning to some of the buildings, and you can see I've got a pretty good fit. So some of the master plan that we modelled now fits into the context, the surrounding context from OpenStreetMap that I imported directly in Twinmotion. So it really kind of sets your project in its kind of urban context quite rapidly. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go and work on the actual model itself. And you can see the first move I've done is to add some beautiful water in Twinmotion. The water really is lovely, and I'm just going to go through, get my ground, and maybe put some asphalt and a few different paving surfaces on those areas of the project. One of the lovely things with Twinmotion for visualization is you can kind of just navigate in really nicely in real time and just adjust the materials and the textures and the colors very, very rapidly. So you can see at the moment it's looking really kind of basic, really blocky. I'm really hoping to show you during the course of this tutorial how amazing we can make this look in quite a rapid sort of space of time. So we're just going ahead and saving the file once we've imported it. You know, we don't want to kind of have to start again, so let's get that saved up. So the first moves, I'm just going to basically apply some nice cladding and materials onto this this dome, if you like. This was actually a ventilation tower for the Jubilee line extension, which ran underneath the project, and actually that was what informed the design, particularly the U-shaped building, which kind of hovers over the top. You can see that in the background. So here I'm about to select all the trees that came through from Vectorworks, and I've selected them, and I'm going to click Start Replace, and you can look how amazing that is. We've replaced them with Twinmotion trees literally within a click. So those basic lollipop trees that I used in Vectorworks, which are all symbols, you know, to keep the file size down and quite rapid. Now we're going to do the same thing with the people. So I've gone into my manager on the Twinmotion side, I've selected all the men, click replace, and what I'm going to do here is actually drag down a few different animated people, and you can see I can kind of drag them down and sort of mix them in together, so we get a nice sort of mix, random mix of different guys and different people that might be appropriate for the project. Brilliant. So when I click replace, anyone that was you know, selected is now replaced. So after a few more moves, I've done the same thing with the children and the ladies as well, and you can see we're really kind of got quite a populated model now with lots and lots of people in. that all really came from Vectorworks as just sort of basic blocky people. Same with the trees, and now that I've added all that lovely detail. So what we're going to do now, we're going to kind of flesh out the materials on the buildings a little bit more. In Vectorworks, we were using colours really just to determine whether they were, commercial or residential, that kind of thing. But that's quite helpful because that's come through into Twinmotion, and now what we can do is apply different materials. So I'm just going to play around with the cladding on this building again. Wasn't quite happy with it before, and you can see we can start to sort of prop out our urban design with a little bit of kind of life. Bring in some boats for the water there. They're quite large, some of these boats, so we'll kind of scale that guy around and move him there. Very easy to do, and position it as required. You can see, let's just get a couple of boats over in this section of the model. There was these beautiful cranes which we modelled in Vectorworks, which came in really well actually, and because it was on the dock side, they were quite an important feature. So now you can see I'm going in and actually enhancing the urban areas within the buildings here in this courtyard with some actual sort of, detailed Twinmotion trees. And I like this because you can kind of place them nice and accurately and really, really rapidly just where you need them in the model. So that's pretty cool. That just adds a nice bit of detail, and it's quite rapid to do. And if you imagine, trying to place this in your CAD software, this would be, well, difficult. Your CAD software would find this level of detail for things like trees and grass and stuff difficult. What we're going to do now then, we're going to kind of work on the groundscape a little bit, trying to get a bit more visual interest into the feature. And all I'm doing is dragging on what they call some primitive objects. So as you can see, this is a really good way to add some extra detail that maybe you didn't have in your CAD model itself, and just sort of highlight some features of the urban design. Maybe some sort of areas or intersections and so on. So what we're going to do now then, we're going to kind of carry on propping out our model with some more people. But you'll notice it's really, really rapid to do, because what I've selected is some groups of people, and these are particularly nice. So as well as individual pose characters, Twinmotion has these wonderful little groups, and they're quite fun because there's like groups of kids playing and people exercising and all sorts of things going on. So you can really bring your model to life quite rapidly. People talking and sort of all sorts of stuff. All of the groups, by the way, you can get into, so if you want to rearrange them, which I'll do a bit later, you just double click into them, then you can kind of move the individual people around if you want to. But you can see how rapid this is, and after a few minutes work, it's really beginning to start to come alive, this block model. So we had our very basic Vectorworks model, which was absolutely brilliant for designing. We could get the areas off and schedule off things like the commercial and the residential areas. We've got the CAD accuracy of a modelling software. But now, you combining that with the benefit of Twinmotion, we're really beginning to start to sort of make this model come alive in terms of visualization. And really excited to show you what we produced by the end of the tutorial. So keep watching. And you will now see that I'm adding something called decals. Decals are great. These are basically a bit like images really that you kind of snap onto the surface of the model. They're really good for adding a lot of detail and things like kind of puddles and stains and cracks, that kind of thing. Signage and leaves, that sort of thing. So really nice extra bit of detail to basically make the model look a bit more weathered and a bit more realistic. So we're just going to get around to this side where those lovely cranes are. I'm going to work on this area a little bit here and put some more people in. And you can see how rapidly it comes alive with all these beautiful animated people that Twinmotion gives you. I'm going to go through and just select different material for those cranes. Just apply it to all three of those cranes. That looks really cool. It's a bit more realistic there. But everything else is pretty blocky, and that's, really for a master plan, that's absolutely fine. That's what we're looking for. The detail, where it's required. We're focusing on the urban design and the landscape for this particular competition, as opposed to the buildings themselves. So we'll just do a little bit more work in this courtyard. And again, you can see the lollipop trees that have come through from Vectorworks, so they're really good. I've got a big library of these in Vectorworks that I can manage, and I can place them nice and accurately, and I can scale them and so on. But there's nothing quite like replacing them with real trees and real people once we get into Twinmotion. So yeah, you can see it's quite fun, very rapid, and let's just get a few more nice trees in this part of the project. So I'll let you sit back and relax for a while and just watch the rest of this part of the tutorial, and I'll be back in a moment with the next part in a few moments, so please do keep watching. So I really recommend that during the course of the project you actually do render out some images and maybe some draft animations, and these are some of the drafts that I produced quite early on. And the reason I do this is because you can sort of begin to see what works and what's not working. It allows you to spot things like the flashing there on the cladding, and maybe those bushes look a bit kind of clunky. So those kind of things are really invaluable. People floating and those sort of things in the wrong position. Okay, so let's kind of carry on working on our model. Now we've rendered out these previews, we can kind of begin to get a feel for what's missing and what might actually bring the model to life a bit more. So this is one of my favourite aspects of Twinmotion. I really love this. It's the paths. So what we're going to do is looking at adding some character paths. And these are so simple to add in Twinmotion. All we need to do is get the pen tool and basically draw a kind of almost like a Bezier curve really, and you can see it sort of curves around nicely. So I'm just trying to create some sort of paths where perhaps people would be walking down the route through the urban design. And then once you've actually got the paths, you can select them, and we'll just kind of create one more, and you can basically increase the width of them, you'll notice, and also maybe the density. So for this kind of urban design, this is perfect in terms of sort of rapidly introducing quite a few people. That was a bit too dense, so we'll tone it down a little bit. Try and get the balance of making it look, you know, natural but not too busy. You've got to be a little bit careful you don't have paths with people kind of clashing into each other, but those are things that we can kind of spot and sort out later. Now, to alter the path, as you can see, I just click onto the beds, sort of vertexes, if you like, and I can just move those around. So I'm just going to move that group out the way of those walking people there, just so they don't collide into each other. Now that we've added those paths in, we just need to readjust our groups of people. That's cool. We're just going to select that whole group and basically move it along a little bit. Got to watch out. Sometimes I found here I was selecting the trees rather than the people, so you kind of get down a bit more to eye level to do that. Same thing's going on there. So let's just move that whole group and we can kind of rotate it around, make it look nice and natural. So yeah, it's definitely quite fun to do, and we'll kind of carry on doing this for a little while and come back in a moment. So now I've decided that I don't really like those sort of very blocky kind of bushes that came in from Vectorworks. They were fine for the block model, but now we need to kind of get in and add a bit more detail to our kind of budding urban design in our little park here. So I'm going to have a go with the Twinmotion Vegetation Paint tool. And you can see what I'm doing is loading up some of the plants that I actually want to kind of essentially paint onto this landscape. I'm going to adjust my brush size a little bit down, and you can see basically when I start to spray, I get essentially with something called a vegetation painted object. And this is really nice in the new Twinmotion 2020. You'll see that we can post adjust. So we'll just delete that bush there. Let's get our brush back. And basically I can reselect the original painted vegetation and just carry on painting it. So it still sees it as the same sort of object, as it were. So it makes it much more efficient in terms of managing it. And we can go back to the original one, carry on painting. And you'll notice basically it paints a random mixture of the plants we've selected and random sizes as well. So this has really kind of started to make our model come alive compared to when we started, if you think back to the Vectorworks model that we imported. So we'll kind of carry on just painting the model. And what we're going to do now is actually paint some different sort of mixtures of plants and flowers in. So to do this, I've actually selected a second painted object. That gives me a different sort of scope that I can actually go in and add a little bit more detail of these smaller types of plants in these areas here. Let's just get rid of that bush again. So just click, select, delete it. And basically we can get our paintbrush back by clicking onto the painted vegetation and carrying on. And it's really great. I love this feature, how it actually remembers what you are actually painting and the mix of plants. Now you can actually select individual ones and increase the density of those as well, and that's a really lovely new feature in the latest Twinmotion 2020. So you can see it's quite easy for me to just drag in some flowers now to this mixture, increase the density, and suddenly you can see, you know, those lovely areas where I did the original painting have now come alive with these beautiful flowers. Just watch the edges. So you will need to probably use the eraser tool and drop the density down or the diameter down a little bit and just kind of erase around the edges there, just so those flowers don't kind of creep onto the hardscape there. But yeah, you can see how rapidly that's started to come alive. So we'll kind of just carry on working on the landscape and the painted vegetation for a little bit, and we'll come back in a moment again. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the landscape. We'll probably do a bit more work on that later, but now we're going to work on the sort of street furniture side of things a little bit. So I'm just dragging another primitive there just so I can get some different materialisation on that surface there. And there's some really nice sort of paving slabs and sort of blocks and that sort of thing. You can see it's very easy to scale and rotate those around. So just kind of make a little feature here. What I'm going to do now is go to City and select some bollards. So there's some really nice sort of lighting bollards. We're kind of really getting down to the nitty-gritty sort of level of detail now. The kind of stuff that, you know, really had no place in our Vectorworks master planning model. It was far too detailed, but we can really quite happily add here in Twinmotion. So by holding Shift down, we can drag off a copy of the bollard, for example, and that means that we can actually duplicate it as a copy or as an instance. And we can also set regular spacings as well. We can also kind of select a bunch of them and drag them off and then rotate them around as I'm doing here, and that can really speed up the process. We can just drag those down and place them quite rapidly. Quite easy to go in and delete the ones you don't need or just reposition them as well, so that's not a problem. And you can see I'm working fairly rapidly, just kind of moving through this process. So let's drag in some benches and some nice sort of seating areas for people in this design. This is a really good library of street furniture that Twinmotion ships with, but you can actually add to this by importing, say, from Vectorworks or SketchUp, Revit, ArchiCAD, whatever CAD system you're using. It's one of the beauties with Twinmotion, because it's sort of an independent renderer. It will work with pretty much any rendering software or CAD software you're actually using in your design business, and that's what I really love about it. Now you can see we're just kind of adding a lot of detail quite rapidly now, and it's really starting to come to life. Sometimes you just got to try things out and see if it works and try a few different styles. Just going to navigate around to sort of check different areas of the project as well. Let's have a few of these kind of types of benches here, I think. And later on we'll be able to readjust some of our people to actually get them to kind of look a bit more natural and interact and sort of sit down as well. So again, we're just copying off a few of those items there. So we're just going to kind of keep going through this little phase, adding a bit more detail to things like the street furniture. And what we'll do is actually kind of get this guy, we'll move him across and we'll make him sit down. So you can see that's how easy it is. You just basically select the group, click in, select the individual person, and maybe change their pose to sitting. And you can make it look quite natural. There she is having her latte in the morning. He's on his phone as usual, and so on. Just kind of create a bit of life. So it's a big project. You know, you can see I'm not necessarily going to need to do this in every single area. But what I'll do is, once I've actually kind of worked out what the final animation sequences are, probably render out some more previews, and then I can come back and focus on some specific areas that kind of, you know, add a bit more detail where required. So I'm going to let you kind of sit back and relax one more time and just watch the final tutorial while I make some final changes, but please hang around because you'll look and see the final output is pretty awesome. So I really hope this tutorial has shown you how easy, how fun and how useful it is to use Twinmotion for urban visualization, and basically take your models from, say, Vectorworks or whatever modeler you're using and really rapidly kind of bring them to life in a beautiful way that you just couldn't have imagined doing a few years ago. So I'd like to invite you one more time to sit back and watch the final output videos. I really hope you like them. I was over the moon with them. So if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching.